Welcome to today's webinar focused on 5 benefits you're missing if your building automation system is out of date. I'm Ann Cosgrove, the Editor-in-Chief of Facility Executive Magazine, and this webinar is presented by Metasys by Johnson Controls. Today we'll cover how an out-of-date building automation system could be costing you significant opportunities to save energy, extend equipment life, and improve occupant comfort. Not only are older building automation systems often incompatible with new technologies, they can often be targets for hackers, leaving organizations open to cybersecurity risks. First, I would like to cover a few housekeeping items. Please note the control panel on your screen. This is where you can submit questions via the question box in that panel. Please send those questions in at any time, and the speakers will address them after the presentation. Also, please note the orange arrow on the left side of your control panel. This is where you can expand or collapse the panel, so please make sure it is expanded so you can access that question box. Also, if at any time you are experiencing technical difficulty, send us a message in that question section and we'll get back to you right away. So now I'd like to introduce your speakers today. As you see on the screen here, we have five expert speakers for you. Nazanin Hoagland is Vice President of Integrated Systems Product Management for Johnson Controls. And in this role, she's responsible for the company's global controls product strategy and roadmap. Previously, she worked at Intel, and before that was employed with Motorola, where she started her career as manufacturing engineer in 1994. Chris Lane is Senior Product Manager at Johnson Controls and has been with the company since 1992. He's held several positions in application engineering, sales, and product management. In his current role, Chris leads a team of product managers responsible for Johnson Controls building automation systems, including Metasys and Facility Explorer. He has a Bachelor of Science degree in Electrical Engineering from the University of Wisconsin-Platteville and an MBA from Cardinal Stritch University. Renee Collins began her career in 1981 with Johnson Controls, and working at various company locations during her tenure with the company, Renee has held positions in sales, sales management, and region general management within the Building Efficiency Group. In her current role, she develops service strategies to achieve desired business outcomes for Johnson Controls customers. Renee has a BS in Applied Engineering from Michigan State University and is also a lead Green Associate. Juliette Pagliaro-Herman is the Director of Service Product Management for Johnson Controls Systems and Services North America. Prior to this role, she served as the Program Manager for Energy and Sustainability for Johnson Controls globally. Before joining the company, she worked for General Electric Healthcare in various roles in global service technology. She has a Bachelor of Science degree from Northwestern University and is also a lead Green Associate. Steve Bruckbaker is an Application Security Manager with Johnson Controls. In December 2015, he joined the company from American Transmission Company, which is a power transmission company. There he served as a Senior Cybersecurity Analyst. And at that company, he led the participation in the national level exercise Grid X3, a nationwide exercise to assess the cybersecurity and resilience of the nation's electrical power grid. Steve also has experience as the Information Security Officer for the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. So with that said, we'll move along to our agenda, giving you a brief overview of what we'll be covering today. Point 1, why keeping your building automation system up to date is important. The 5 benefits of the modern building automation system. Also a spotlight on building automation systems and cybersecurity and getting the most out of these systems. So before I do hand it over to Renee Collins, we do have a poll question that we'd like to ask you to participate in. So please take a moment to read that and cast your vote. When was the last time you updated your building automation system? Was it less than 1 year ago, 1 to 2 years ago, 3 to 5 years ago, 5 or more, or are you not sure? So please cast your vote there and we will show the results momentarily. Okay, so the results, it looks like 28% inched out the lead in less than 1 year ago, followed by, I'm not sure, with 24, 5+ years ago, about 21%, and the remainder at 14 and 14. So thank you very much for that insight. Now I will hand it over to Renee.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here and appreciate you joining us. Based on the poll results, it looks like there's almost 40% of the group participating today has updated their system within the last couple of years. And today, Nazi and I would like to share some reasons on why the rest of you may want to join that club. So kick things off, let's talk about what you might be missing if your BAS system is out of date. More than likely, the people and the HVAC systems are not as efficient as they could be. And that's really because the building automation system doesn't have an intuitive interface that allows the user to do simple tasks easily, like troubleshooting for faults or fine-tuning control sequences or maybe updating control schedules. And so energy is being wasted in the building. You know, another consideration if you have an older building automation system is that its operating system or platform may also be out of date or no longer supported. You know, like Microsoft Windows Embedded XP. Can you imagine, you know, using Windows 98 at home? Well, you don't want to use it at work either. And so that's another good reason to keep your system up to date, because in case of failure, it would take longer to bring that system up to speed with an outdated operating system. You know, the other consideration that I think is really important is really the older building automation systems may not have the industry preferred communications protocol. So what that means is your BAS system may be sitting in an island all by itself, if you will, and doesn't have the ability to integrate or talk with other third-party devices. And so as we talk about the Internet of Things, you won't be able to take advantage of, you know, what that truly means. Nazi, how about cybersecurity vulnerabilities?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Renee, for that. So cybersecurity is an issue that we've seen in all industries. We've definitely heard stories regarding breaches that has resulted in some data to be compromised. I'm sure pretty much everybody on this call at some point or another has received a credit card in the mail that says, hey, we've had a breach and here's your new credit card. And we've had to go through a certain number of changes to get that working again. So it is not unique. It happens, and it happens to pretty much everyone in the industry. But having said that, it really is about how we react to it. Some industries are faster to respond, and some industries are slower. But the bottom line is that it's important for us to know that this is an issue, and we as an industry have to keep our BAS software up to date. We're making a lot of advancements in technology, and at the rate that these advancements happen, it is really easy to end up with an obsolete software that is easily prone to attack. Knowing what to look for so the system does not get compromised is very, very important. In this session here today, we've got a portion of our topic dedicated to cybersecurity, and we will cover that in a few minutes. Now, having said that, what are the benefits of a modern BAS, and what do you need to consider? Well, we have summarized those in 5 categories. So if you're looking for a BAS, what if you look for a BAS that helps increase your productivity with intuitive user interface? Imagine that you can perform your task in a series of logical steps using a friendly user interface, which is easy to get to, and the clicks are in the way that you're expecting them to be for your next steps. How about a system that allows you to have full access on the go? And that'll help you save time with a fully mobile access so that you don't have to actually be at the site to see what is going on. You can handle it remotely. What if the site that you choose has got the ability to help you with saving money, help you understand what you're doing with your energy, and help you save operational cost through those energy savings? And last but not least, helping with investments that you've already made, maximizing the use of that, and also having a system that is safe and minimizes your IT security issues. With that said, I'll be turning it over to Juliet and Chris Lane to talk to us a little bit about each one of these steps in more detail.
Great. Great, thanks, Nazi. This is Juliet, and we hear a lot of different things from our customers about the challenges they face. So one thing that we hear a lot is that our customers have a hard time finding and keeping staff, and especially staff who are experienced in buildings and building operations. And so they ask for things, to help them do more with less, to get them to critical information more quickly. I've seen people who have created cheat sheets for their existing systems to map what they're seeing on the screen to what's real life in the building to try and minimize the time it takes for them to troubleshoot issues. And finally, with so much stretched thin, nobody has time to take days or weeks out to go to a training class to learn how to use their new system. They need to get up and running right away. So Chris, how would a modern BAS help with some of these challenges?
Yeah, I think operator productivity is really an area where modern building automation systems can have a really big impact. Our own user experience team, they've logged thousands of hours of in-field research, and one of the things that they noticed most often about existing systems is that the information that's presented on the screens for the operators, it was typically organized by the building automation system's components or the component hierarchy. In other words, if you kind of imagine the navigation tree on the left-hand side of the screen, it went something like this: config, server, engine, network, device, and point. And then the operator would have a cheat sheet so that they could figure out which one of those points was actually the cooling set point for the VAV box feeding the conference room on the second floor of the main building. More modern BAS offerings have user interfaces that don't require these kind of cheat sheets. Instead, they display information using familiar references, natural references like the floor plan or the layout of the building, and the names or identification of the equipment. Also, more modern building automation systems contain the defined relationships between equipment and the spaces that they serve. For example, VAV Box 7 is providing conditioned air to Classroom 201. Also, relationships between equipment, like VAV Box 10 is getting its supply air from Air Handling Unit 6, which is getting its chilled water from main central plant. Modern building automation systems have these relationships hard-coded so that users don't have to use their cheat sheets in order to quickly find information, understand the dependencies between mechanical equipment, and make better command choices, and ultimately restore order to their system more quickly. These kinds of spaces and equipment-based search and navigation features are really helpful for new users because it's a simple and natural way for operators to interact with their building automation system. This oftentimes results in less than 5 minutes for a new operator to learn the system. So what other concerns do facility managers have, Juliet?
Well, great question, Chris. One thing that we see and hear all the time is that, being a facility manager is just not a desk job. They're not sitting at their desks. They don't always have access to a full-on computer or laptop screen. They rely a lot on their phones and tablets to get critical information wherever they are in the building to help them troubleshoot issues and solve problems for their occupants. And the other thing is, they have to interact with this information on these tiny screens, often when they have personal protective equipment on, like gloves and safety glasses. So, pinching and zooming becomes even that much more difficult for them. So they really need to have ways to instantly and easily access information from their building automation system on the go in an intuitive way. So how does a modern BAS help them solve some of those problems, Chris?
Yeah, similar to our previous discussion, our user researchers, when they're in the field, they've noticed quite frequently that facilities personnel are often away from their desk and could use a way to interface with their building automation system without having to return to a fixed operator workstation. And you'll find that the more modern BAS offerings allow facility personnel to use their cell phones or a tablet in addition to their desktop to gain access to the building automation system. And I realize that many people listening here might be thinking, well, come on, smartphones aren't that new, tablets aren't that new or that modern. But if you think about it, they really kind of are, considering the lifespan of a typical building and a typical building automation system. You know, the iPhone was released in 2007, the iPad was released in 2010, and I'm guessing there's a lot of building automation systems out there that were commissioned well before then. There's also been a lot of recent innovations in how web browsers display information on a screen. More modern BAS systems use technologies like HTML5 to display rich information without requiring any type of client-side software like Java or Silverlight or Flash or even like a mobile app. This eliminates time spent installing, maintaining, and updating software on client devices. And it also addresses some of the more recent security concerns that have been found with these client-side plugins. There's also a bunch of new user interface innovations and technologies, one of which is called responsive design. This is where information that is displayed on a screen automatically resizes itself according to the type of device being used. And you also find that more modern BAS systems, their screens are touch-friendly. So in older systems, they may have had the ability to resize the screen so that it could fit on a phone, but it required a mouse and a keypad to actually interact with that, and that's not going to work. So newer BAS systems are touch-friendly, don't require a mouse or a keyboard, and very intuitive to use. And what does all this result in? Well, the experience of accessing your building automation system on a phone is nearly identical to the experience you would have with accessing it on either a tablet or your desktop. Users only have to learn one experience, and then they can share that experience no matter what device they're trying to use to access the building automation system. So if you've got an older system, your operators are really missing out on the ability to access their systems with their mobile device and be untethered and be able to access it on the go.
I can see how that would really help a facility manager who's running around the building. You know, Chris, another thing that we hear from our customers all the time is that they are under a lot of pressure to find energy savings within their facilities. They've got energy saving targets. Sometimes they have companies who have greenhouse gas reduction targets. They haven't necessarily been given the capital budget to go after some of these savings. So they need to find low cost or no cost ways to identify and prioritize energy saving opportunities. And the other thing is, you know, again, along the theme of doing more with less, they need to find ways to get the most out of the systems they already have, rather than looking to replace those systems to get those savings. So how can we use a modern BAS to help them find these energy savings, Chris?
Well, there certainly are a lot of ways to address those issues, to reduce your energy consumption, optimize your system, optimize your equipment. And there's actually a wide variety of things that you can do with a varying degree of cost, complexity, invasiveness, and ROI. Some of them may be product-based, and some of them may be something that you can do yourself, or maybe a service-based offering. Some things, you know, that I thought of was just doing a thorough checkout of all of the control components found in the building. Some of our research has indicated that over 70% of all issues found during a retro commissioning event was related to operational control issues. Another thing you can do, and even do yourself, is calibrate your sensors or recalibrate your sensors. Sensor error has been found to be one of the top 5 reasons for operational energy waste. And it can affect occupant comfort as well, which also leads to a decline in occupant productivity. And then something just as simple and straightforward as doing a database backup to make sure that your database backup maintains your system's integrity in case of a system failure or physical damage to the system. You know that you can continue operations with minimal disruption to your business. And then another way to gain operational efficiencies is with your BAS is to take a deeper look at some of the data that it's collecting. You know, building automation systems have always collected a lot of data. There's lots of instrumentation, a lot of sensors, a lot of controllers that are all acting together as a system. But more recent advances in technology have provided facility managers with more insight, more tools to use that data more effectively. For example, fault detection and diagnostics. Kind of a buzzword lately, but that really is a real life thing that can be added to a building automation system can gather information from the sensors connected to that BAS and the equipment, and you can apply complex algorithms and rules-based analysis to uncover potential problems before they're detectable through traditional alarming mechanisms. These kinds of applications not only alert your staff to impending issues, but they can also help identify issues and their root causes and provide easy to understand displays, helping your techs quickly zero in on a preventative solution. These kind of offerings and this kind of analysis can dramatically reduce your baseline energy consumption. It can impact you and decrease your capital costs and equipment wear. It can extend the life of your equipment. It can also help fix minor issues before they become major breakdowns. So it helps with your expenses there. Some applications will even help you prioritize events by using their cost savings potential so that your staff can take the appropriate action given the priority of the problem. What else are you hearing, Juliet?
Well, you know, another thing that we hear from facility managers is that, you know, they need to get the most out of the things that they already have in the buildings. I mean, we've got folks out there who are still, in some cases, leveraging pneumatic controls and bringing those into their building automation system. So they really need to have a way to have a continuum or a path to make sure that they can take advantage of these new things without having to rip and replace a lot of hardware or other components. The other thing is, you know, with all of the buzz around Internet of Things, they want to take advantage of some of the benefits of that by connecting their building automation systems with other technology systems, both HVAC technologies as well as their business technologies, to really get the benefits that the Internet of Things is promising. So how can having a modern BAS help with those sorts of challenges, Chris?
Yeah, I completely understand. You know, for many building owners and facility executives, a building automation system is a significant asset, and one that I had mentioned previously is expected to have a pretty long life cycle. Facility managers are tasked with getting the most out of this investment and could use some help in extending its life and getting more out of it. Over time, you'll find that the technology components that make up a building automation system can become outdated as technology advances throughout the course of the BAS system's operational life. Older systems need regular updating, so you can make sure that you choose a BAS provider that has a history of clear and easy migration and modernization paths. Interoperability is another thing to consider, because it's very likely that over time you're going to want to add components to your building automation system, and most likely it's not going to be from the original BAS provider. You know, as a longtime Johnson Controls employee and shareholder, I would love for every building to be top to bottom JCI with a Metasys building automation system, York chiller, York air handler, Titus VAV box, Hart & Cooley grills and registers, and so on. But to be honest, I've never been in a building where that's been the case. Building automation systems need to be interoperable with third-party gear. You'll find that the more modern building automation systems offer customers easy integration using industry standard approaches and protocols like BACnet. BACnet's sponsored by ASHRAE. It's an industry standard. It's an industry-backed standard. And you can keep your BACnet compliance up to date. You can keep interoperable with third-party BACnet devices. The BACnet standard itself is evolving over time. It keeps getting better and better, and more devices can become interoperable with it. And also, choosing a building automation system provider that keeps their BACnet compliance validated through testing via the BTL BACnet testing labs. These are the kinds of things that can significantly extend the life, the working life of a building automation system and maximize your ROI. Is there anything else, Juliet?
Yeah, well, I think the last thing, you know, and something that we've been hearing more and more about is, you know, people have concerns about cybersecurity. You know, as these systems become more web-enabled and as they start to integrate with other building technology systems, people have concerns about the impact of a cybersecurity attack. Is the BAS a vulnerability? The other thing we're seeing is that, you know, our facility managers are starting to have the IT people get into their space and start to ask questions about all of these devices that are hanging off the IT network, and trying to understand what the system is and whether or not it's a risk for them. So that's a real concern that our customers have. How does having a modern BAS help address some of those concerns?
Yes, cybersecurity. It's a topic of major concern both inside and outside our industry. As you've heard already, lots of news reports, a lot of industry articles about cybersecurity and patching systems. And the real reason is that more and more we are finding that building automation systems are sharing the building's IT infrastructure. That might mean sharing a server in the data center to host the building automation software, sharing the physical network, sharing databases, and I already mentioned about sharing client devices or using client devices to access the building automation system, like PCs and phones and tablets. There are a lot of reasons for building automations to share that IT infrastructure. It can help reduce the installed cost of a system by sharing those assets. And it can also provide remote accessibility, something that's very convenient for operators to use. And even when building automation systems are 100% isolated from the building's IT network, the components of the building automation system itself often uses off-the-shelf standard IT-like technology like embedded Windows, Microsoft Windows, embedded Linux operating systems, Java, SQL databases, and web browsers. As a result, today's building automation systems really need to comply with corporate and government IT guidance and guidelines and best practices. Many of these IT security guidelines and best practices are really intended at preventing unauthorized access, keeping the bad guys out, keeping your system secure, preventing access that could be exploited for nefarious purposes. Some of the examples of being compliant to your IT department might mean enforcing the use of strong and complex passwords, using more modern hashing algorithms when storing passwords, identifying and disabling dormant or unused accounts, capturing and logging information on events and audits that happen across network devices throughout the system, deactivating unused ports, validating user credentials against an existing server like an Active Directory or a Radius authentication server. These IT security technologies and cybersecurity best practices that I've just talked about, they have evolved over time, and they will continue to evolve as more and more devices get interconnected together and share networks, and as more people find ways to get unauthorized access to systems. Those security techniques and best practices will change. So it's critical to regularly update your building automation system to stay compliant. If you don't, you're missing out on security fixes and security patches. And Ann, I'll pass this back to you because this whole topic of IT cybersecurity is so important in our industry. I really think we need to do a deep dive on this topic.
Yes, thanks, Chris, and thank you all for your presentations thus far. And as we've noted here, at this point we will move into our cybersecurity spotlight. But first, to kick that off, we do have a second poll question for you, as you'll see on your screen now, and that is: how often do you engage your IT department when making BAS-related decisions? Monthly or more frequently, biannually, on an annual basis, never, or does your organization not have a formal IT department for you to interface with? So I think this will be interesting to see how the collaborations and interactions that are going on with our attendees today. If you can take a moment to cast your vote. Okay, so it looks like 28% monthly or more frequently. We're at 24 and 24, even biannually and annually. Never, 14%, and 10, my organization does not have an formally IT. So it looks like we have a good interaction with a little over a quarter of our audience, but I will hand it back to the experts to discuss this. Thanks.
Thanks for that, Ann. Hi, this is Steve Brook from Global Product Security here at Johnson Controls. One point we'll make in another slide a little bit later on here is that working with your IT team, as Chris had noted, really does have a direct and positive impact on your level of security assurance, and we hope to highlight this in an upcoming slide. Here we are highlighting a few news headlines to demonstrate the impacts that cybersecurity incidents are having across all industries, affecting all kinds of information systems. And as Nazi alluded to, HVAC systems are no exception, especially as we have more interconnections and have more needs to connect these devices to other networks and to the internet for remote access. As markets have continued to demand increased connectivity of building automation system devices and Internet of Things, IoT devices, are routinely now talking on building automation systems. This has increased the security challenges and really contributed to the need to continually assess risks. And thus, we're really needing to continually update and upgrade systems as these conditions change. So in a way, we can take our cue from recommended security practices that have proven effective on other mission-critical internal servers. And given the evolving interconnectedness for many HVAC systems, which previously in some cases were not necessarily connected to traditional IT networks at all, we need to partner to evolve the security controls around these systems. Updating software is one of the key steps to take to ensure secure systems. This is not a new concept by any stretch. Numerous well-accepted security standards such as ISO, one of my personal favorites is SANS 20 Critical Controls, and NIST guidelines, particularly 800-53, typically used by the federal government. Routinely, these standards list system updating and patching as a key security practice. So what then are some specific best practices we can look to from existing best practices commonly used in other critical IT infrastructure? This first one we'll explore is keeping operating systems and applications current. Again, upgrading and patching are a key part of an overall security program. Now, this is no way a complete program. This doesn't solve all of your problems, but we want to highlight that here today and the security benefits of keeping your BAS system up to date. So why would this be an issue? Well, bottom line is no software is perfect. Modern applications are very complex software ecosystems, oftentimes with millions of lines of code. Over time, security researchers and hackers discover new ways to compromise software and systems. So how do companies that create these products respond? Well, they respond by producing security updates and patches on a regular cadence. You'll see this routinely with Microsoft Windows, for example, that they have a program in place to produce patches on a regular basis, a Windows update. And in some cases, on an emergency basis, when a critical vulnerability is discovered, they'll put out what's called an out-of-band patch. The ability to keep the operating system and your BAS-specific applications up to date is really a critical part of cyber secure operations. And then another point to make is that we need to leverage the latest security features on leading BAS systems. So here we list a couple of features of the more modern BAS system, and Chris had expounded on these in a little more detail as well. Older systems may not have some of these features. So if you have a system that's been in your facility for 5, 7, even 10 years, some of these services such as encrypted communications and strong user password management might not exist in those older systems, right? So updating allows you to take advantage of these improvements that are being made by your BAS vendors. Vendors are continually improving their system security capabilities as we go, so staying up to date helps you take advantage of those improvements. Another best practice we'd like to talk about is reviewing network and system security posture. The upgrade process creates an opportunity for facilities, IT, and your BAS vendor to get together to ensure that you've identified what's on your network, understand your risk. And let me clarify this term posture. You'll hear that in the security field quite a bit. Overall, this really just means how are we addressing the major components of a good security program on the big picture, big scale level. Do we have effective technical, administrative, and physical security controls in place to manage all the reasonable threats? And again, this is continually evolving type of a situation. As more interconnections and IP-based components have been introduced, what was good enough security 5 years ago might not be good enough anymore. So we need the right people at the table to review this on a regular basis. Staying on a regular update schedule creates an opportunity to review what you have and evaluate your security posture in light of continually evolving threat landscapes. So our next point, know the availability of older hardware. So another term that I'll introduce here, and many of you in the security community will certainly have heard of this, is called the CIA triad. Three facets of security are confidentiality, integrity, and availability. So confidentiality, that's just a term that should be very familiar. Is the information being kept private? Integrity is the information only being changed by authorized personnel and processes. Can we count down the data? Availability is something in security that is sometimes overshadowed by confidentiality and integrity. And as hardware ages, hardware poses an increasing risk of unplanned outage due to hardware failure. Normally, for instance, IT lifecycle is between 3 and 5 years. So your laptop, desktop, servers, they look at about a 3 to 5 year lifespan when they'll start proactively replacing devices. In the industrial control system space, including BAS, it's not uncommon to have an expectation that hardware will last in excess of 10 years, sometimes even 20 years for simpler type devices. So how do we bridge that gap? Well, a good way to start is to start tracking the age of hardware, especially in terms of commodity IT hardware that's deployed as part of a BAS network. We want to ensure that you have a plan for proactive replacement of hardware before an unexpected failure occurs. When unexpected failure occurs, you can expect an outage of a system, and you can also expect unplanned expense as well. If we have an outage and it costs money to replace something and it wasn't in the budget cycle, that can be a real strain on already stressed budgets. So looking at the age of hardware, again, just another way that staying on an upgrade cycle will help you avoid a potential security issue. And then our fifth point here is really just a wrap up to reiterate that we need to treat a building automation system like any other high value infrastructure server. We need to apply similar controls that we see on other IT infrastructure. We have a few basic controls here, for example, for your consideration. Secure network configuration, similar to other IT infrastructure. Do we have our BAS systems only talking to the outside world through VPN? Are they behind a proper modern firewall? Have we considered perhaps two-factor authentication? So not just a password, but something you have in your possession as well in order to strengthen authentication security. Are we performing proper monitoring? Again, something Chris alluded to. Are we sending our logs from the BAS system to the IT shop so that they can analyze this and detect if an unfortunate security event is occurring? Most modern BAS can support all of these controls, but again, if we don't stay up to date, then we may miss out on those opportunities. Again, all of these are things that your IT staff are already doing for their existing IT infrastructure. So it makes sense to leverage their expertise and capabilities. So finally, in closing in the cybersecurity area, I'd just like to reiterate that the relationship between IT, facilities, and the BAS vendors are really key to ensuring long-term security assurance on your BAS system. As a former BAS customer myself, I've been part of these discussions, and they really do yield great benefits in terms of the security of your system. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Juliet.
Thanks, Steve. So in conclusion, we'd like to talk just a couple minutes more about how you get the most out of your BAS, whether you have a modern or an older BAS. And, there are three key things that we would look at. One is, making sure that you're doing proper system maintenance, whether it be with your vendor or in-house. You want to make sure, as Chris mentioned, that you are routinely going over the system, checking to make sure that, when you command the damper moves and that sensors are calibrated and that points are communicating, because you can have the best control sequences in the world, but if the system isn't actually functioning properly, they're not going to do anything for you and they're not going to help you save energy. And also, as Chris mentioned, there's just a certain level of care and feeding that you need to do on your BAS, and number one with a bullet would be database backups, just as a risk mitigation strategy, if nothing else. A lot of folks have invested a lot of time and effort and money doing complex programming in their systems, and that can be wiped out in an instant, with a lightning strike or some other unfortunate catastrophe. By having a backup, you can greatly reduce the time and expense it takes to restore some of those critical functions and systems. The second thing, and this is something that Steve really alluded to as well, is keeping your system up to date. Software subscriptions or software maintenance packages, they're called a lot of different things, but basically it's something that you can buy that basically entitles you to all of the major and minor upgrades that come out for your system in a certain period of time. So this is a great way. It's something you can work into a budget, an annual budget, and so that you are always kept up to date and have access to that latest software updates and subscriptions. And you always hear a lot of fanfare when major releases come out, but where you may be at risk if you don't have a software subscription, you may not be aware that if a patch release has come out unless you're actively checking on a website or proactively going out and making sure that you've got the latest and greatest version. So a software subscription is a great way just to have yourself covered and to automatically ensure that you get those upgrades and updates and you've got it worked into your budget. And then finally, there are a variety of other support services that can be provided, including technical support, access to online knowledge databases for troubleshooting, remote monitoring, which can help you identify critical alarms and respond to them more quickly. So there's definitely a lot of other things that can be done and that can help you and your teams get more out of your system. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Nazi and she'll wrap everything up for us.
Thank you. Thank you for being with us for the past 45 minutes or so. So I'd like to close our presentation part with summarizing what we discussed. We touched on why it's important to keep our BAS systems up to date and how that helps us with reducing our operational costs and our risk, and at the same time maximizing our investments. We touched on what to expect and what to look for in a modern BAS system. So if you're look out for a new system, why don't you look for something that is intuitive and easy to use, that it has capabilities for being mobile optimized, a system that integrates easily and minimizes your cybersecurity threats. It is very important to understand what cybersecurity is and how you can defend yourself against it so that you're not the next victim. Now, the good news is that with all of these can be solved by having a BAS partner that understands the issues, who is proactive and can help you with solutions. I'd like to thank you for your time and hope that you found this session helpful. With that said, I think we'll go to question session with Anne.
Great. Thank you, Nazi, and thank you to everyone who's spoken so far today, and of course to our attendees. So we can turn to some questions, and we'll have about 10 to 15 minutes to do that. So first, if we could back up to the actual offerings and benefits that a building automation system might give, especially one that's more updated and has more of the modern features. You had all talked about from various angles how today's modern building automation systems create operational efficiencies, both for occupants and as well as for behind the scenes in the facilities department. So can you just give us some examples of features that help to do this, whether back of house with the facilities department or in satisfying occupants? Maybe some highlights of features.
Yeah, this is Chris. I guess there's a couple of things, specific things. One would be more modern ways to manage your alarms. I think older traditional building automation systems, they all kind of handled alarming the same way. An alarm would occur based on some predefined criteria, and then the alarm would be populated in some type of alarm console, might be emailed out or sent out via some type of communication, depending on how old the system is. But those consoles are often just kind of lists of alarms. And while they have a lot of useful information, like the timestamp of the alarm and maybe the point involved in the alarm and maybe the controller it was sourced from, there's much more information that could be presented, and that's one example of where more modern building automation systems have addressed that. You'll see that in real life building automation systems, in real life buildings, those alarm consoles can get very long, can be very long. The lists of alarms often become so massive that an alarm console sometimes even just gets turned off or not used. The more modern building automation systems address that by listing maybe only the most recent occurrence of alarm and then grouping the occurrences together. Allowing features such as bulk acknowledgement of alarms to easily clear out that list and make it more manageable to sort through. And I mentioned the spaces and the equipment relationships before. That not only helps with navigation and searching, but when in an alarm console environment, you're now able to see exactly where in the building that alarm occurred and which specific piece of equipment that is affected by that alarm. So it leads you to the root source or the root cause of the alarm and makes your operators more efficient at troubleshooting the root cause and getting that addressed quicker, restoring order to the system quicker. So that's one example. Some scheduling enhancements. So just the overall improvement to scheduling interfaces. I think the consumer products industry has made a lot of user interface improvements to the way that we interact with time-based features like clocks, calendars, and building automation, more modern building automation systems have kind of reused those innovations and made their scheduling interfaces more like a Microsoft Outlook calendar environment, so that operators that want to make scheduling adjustments don't have to learn any new type of scheduling widget or how does this building automation handle scheduling. Simply by touching the scheduling feature, you're presented with a familiar interface, one that if you knew how to interact with a Microsoft Outlook schedule or some other consumer products industry schedule, you'll be able to set your schedule on your building automation system. And then being able to create exceptions to schedules more quickly. So setting up a fixed schedule is great. Scheduling is probably the most popular feature within a building automation system to save energy. Just simply turning off equipment when the building's not occupied and setting that occupancy period based on a known schedule. Well, sometimes things change, right? Sometimes buildings' usage change. Sometimes there's after-hours events. Sometimes there's holidays. Sometimes things occur that aren't really planned. And allowing operators to quickly make exceptions to the fixed schedule is one way to, kind of squeeze out that last little bit of energy savings by turning off equipment when it's not needed, or in the other case, keeping the equipment on, keep your occupants comfortable when it is needed.
Great. Thank you very much for that overview. And actually, you had been talking about schedules, and we had a question come in on that, so we will ask it now. And that's, does Johnson Controls have the capability for exclusive schedule control for building managers to use to access event schedules without going into master schedules and changing them?
Not sure I fully understand the question.
Yeah, I can repeat it. It says, does Johnson Controls have the capability for exclusive schedule control for building managers to use to access event schedules without going into master schedules and changing them?
Yes. Yes, definitely. Within our Metasys scheduling capability, you can certainly do that.
Okay, thank you. And actually, we'll jump over to some cybersecurity questioning now. And one of those was, Steve, you and others, you had covered a good deal of tips on that, and we wanted to circle back to talking about tips, which you had gone through, best practices, I should say, but specifically with updates and patches. Can you elaborate on how facilities people can keep up on that? Is that something that comes through those software subscriptions? Is it, what resources would they use, or is there just a kind of a time schedule they should set up to check on those updates and patches? And any examples would be welcome as well.
Sure. We certainly recommend that customers have a software update subscription with their BAS vendor. This makes it much more predictable in terms of the cost, and it encourages all parties to check back on a regular basis to ensure that you're getting both minor releases, security patches, and major updates in a timely fashion. So in my opinion, I think having a standing software update agreement is, in terms of the business side of things, is the best way to ensure that happens. And that also has a positive impact on ensuring that the underlying operating system, if there is a non-embedded operating system, that stays up to date as well. Because that's, again, an opportunity to take a look at that system and will cause you to look, oh, has that been patched recently, yes or no? And if not, then this allows the customer to keep their infrastructure pieces and parts of the BAS system, the parts that they support, keeping those up to date as well, so the whole infrastructure does not fall behind.
Okay, thank you. And then back to the energy savings aspect. I think we have time for about one more question. So I did want to put this out to you all. At one point in the beginning of the presentation, we talked about how retrocommissioning can often bring up or often finds issues or problems with maybe controls or sensors not being calibrated and other areas that might not be visible on a daily basis. Can you talk about that specifically through the lens of the building automation system and how modern BAS may help with that, with identifying those items?
Sure. This is Juliette. One way where the modern BAS can really help identify those problems is through trends and visualization. So a lot of times you can trend points, do very simple things like look for patterns. Are things turning off when the building is unoccupied? Are you looking, and is everything turning off? I was in one facility where they had a pretty good night setback, except for they weren't setting back the VAV boxes. So what was happening was the air handling units were shutting down, but then the VAV boxes at night were turning themselves on and powering up the electric reheat to heat up the space. Because they hadn't extended that programming down to the VAV boxes. So simple things like that can identify even where you think you're shutting stuff off, where things may not actually be turned off through simple trending and visualization. Chris, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, a couple of things. So I mentioned the equipment relationships that are predefined within the more modern building automation systems. What that does is it allows you to trace back root causes. So you may be experiencing or having a cold complaint in a room, which may not be caused by the VAV box providing the supply air to that room. It may be caused by something upstream. Having those equipment relationships defined within the building automation system would lead the operator to kind of find that. And you may be finding not only an equipment issue that is causing you know, a mechanical issue, but it may be causing you to waste energy. You know, you may be having heating and cooling on at the same time and they're fighting each other. Having those predefined equipment relationships defined within the building automation system makes troubleshooting that root cause a little bit easier. And then the second thing is really the use of an occupancy schedule and making sure that you leave the system in automated control. So when the building automation system is in automated control, it's really in its most energy efficient mode. But sometimes operators need to go ahead and make changes and put it into manual override. So one of the things that you could do is, you know, maybe at the top of the day is take a look at all of the things that are in manual override and release those. Make sure that it goes back or reverts to automatic control. Or use features like timed operator override so that you don't forget, or in case you do forget, the system automatically reverts to a more efficient, more economical automated control. And then I guess third thing I thought of is one of the things that we heard from facility operators during our user research is they wanted to have a visualization of just tell me what's wrong with the building. And there are views and screens that can be provided with more modern building automation systems that identify those potential problem areas, that show just the things that are wrong with the system, things that are in alarm, or things that are offline, or things that have been manually overridden. There are reports that can show that information fairly clearly and allow operators to focus on those things first.
Yeah, and just to tag on to that, you mentioned before, Chris, about alarm management. A lot of times what happens is systems are generating excessive alarming and it's actually masking, you know, the true issues that need to be addressed. So by better alarm management and weeding out those alarms that are not meaningful, you can get to the root causes a lot faster and address those energy wasting issues.
Thank you. Thanks, Juliet and Chris, and to all of our speakers, of course. Well, it looks like we are out of time, and thank you again to Metasys by Johnson Controls for sponsoring this webinar, and of course our audience for attending today and sending in your questions. A recording of this webinar will be available online at facilityexecutive.com, as well as on the Johnson Controls site at johnsoncontrols.com. And if you would like a copy of the presentation sent to you, please let us know, and we will send you one via email. Thank you very much, and have a great afternoon.